The Athletic.
Hi folks, welcome to another episode of the Athletic FPL podcast. I'm Mark McGettigan. You'll find me on Twitter at FPL General. Gameweek 1 is done and dusted. Erling Haaland and Alexander Mitrovic bagged braces. Mo Salah did what Mo Salah does in opening game weeks. Pascal Gross downed Manchester United, and Dejan Kulusevski proved to be the highest scoring 8 million midfielder. On today's podcast, I'll do a quick review of Game Week 1, share my Game Week 2 watch list, which is made up of 30 players, answer questions from Twitter, and take a look at captaincy and potential transfers for the weekend. If you'd like to become an Athletic subscriber, visit theathletic.com/FPL pod to avail of the latest discount offer for new subscribers, which is just £1 a month at the moment. A brief review of how my first game week went. Finished on 69 points, no injuries, no suspensions, so hopefully some straightforward decisions for game week 2. The team I ended up with, I went for the 2 Leicester 4 million goalkeepers, not that it got me too many points, but in doing so, I downgraded Sanchez to Everson, and that allowed me to upgrade Perisic to Reece James, so that worked out quite nicely. Perisic was on the bench, James got 7 points. The rest of my back line, double Liverpool defence, Trent and Robertson. 2 blanks there. Cancelo did the business. Like Reece James, both players picked up yellow cards, but managed to get 2 bonus points each, which was very, very nice. Salah captain, pretty standard, good return from him. A blank from Mason Mount. That was frustrating because I was basically between Kulusevski and Mason Mount. I kept chopping and changing, ended up on Mason Mount, but more questions about Mount and the 8 million midfielders later. Martinelli on the score sheet, should have been on the score sheet twice, missed a very good chance. Bailey blank, but I'll give him a little bit more time. Haaland did the business on Sunday, and a blank from Gabriel Jesus, but it was a very good performance, so happy to keep him long term as well. On the bench, Andreas Pereira, very promising performance from him as a 4.5 million midfielder. Great option for our benches. We can even play him in good fixtures. Nico Williams and Plange also on the bench. So overall, pretty solid start to the season. There's no 59th minute shoutouts in Game Week 1, no dreaded 59th minute substitutions. Keep an eye out for them in Game Week 2 and be sure to tag me in a tweet when they happen. Taking a look now at my Game Week 2 watch list. So once all the games were completed in Game Week 1, I went through each of the 20 teams, sorted by round points, and added the players to my watch list who I may be interested in buying in the near future. And more importantly, when it comes to that first wildcard, lots of these players will be in the running. So no goalkeepers on the watch list. I don't bother adding them because, again, don't usually change that position until the wildcard. So I'll be sticking with the 2 Leicester guys, most likely until I wildcard. Defenders, first up at Chelsea. So I've already got Reece James, but I've added Chilwell and Cucurella to the watch list. Chilwell got, I think, about 64 minutes, got the clean sheet. Cucurella came on for his debut from the bench. Cucurella is very interesting. He's only 5 million. He can play left wing back, can play left centre back. So I think he's going to become a very popular FPL option in the near future. So between Chilwell and Cucurella, probably most likely to go Cucurella because of his versatility. At Arsenal, Zinchenko. So I didn't opt for a defensive asset from Arsenal. Didn't go for Ramsdale. Didn't go for the likes of Gabriel or Zinchenko either. Just looking at the fixtures against Crystal Palace and Leicester in the first 2 game weeks, I didn't feel overly confident of clean sheets in those fixtures. Obviously, they went and got one, and Zinchenko got himself an assist and 3 bonus points as well. So there's a question on him later. I will come back to him. There was a very impressive performance at centre-back for Arsenal for Saliba, been out on loan for I think 3 seasons before this one, and came in for his first Premier League start and he was excellent. I think himself and Gabriel with Partey in front of them, they're going to be a pretty good defence this season. So Saliba's only 4.5, so you can save yourself 0.5 on Gabriel or Zinchenko, and I think he nabbed 2 bonus points as well. So Saliba 4.5, very interesting option. Perisic on the watch list, very close to being in my Game Week 1 team. Glad I swerved him. He's got Chelsea next. and I'll come back to him possibly game week 3 or game week 4. Trippier, another player who was close to being in the game week 1 squad. Good performance game week 1. Always got the attacking potential. Castagna at Leicester got himself on the score sheet from a corner. Great header from a Madison corner. Castagna's on the watch list, but Leicester's fixtures are not great next 3 or 4 game weeks. So that's probably one again for the first wild card. And it's not just Castagna. He's added to the watch list because he scored. But if James Justin's going to be playing wing back on the other side, both of those players at 4.5 are going to be interesting options. Obviously, Pereira, unfortunately, out long term again now. So that's good news for Justin and Castagna when it comes to FPL. Final defender is Fabian Schär. Scored a great goal. He is a goal scoring defender. I think he averages something like a goal every 6 or 7 games across his career. So he's got a very, very good goal scoring record. He was in the starting 11 for Newcastle alongside Dan Burn. It was a bit of a surprise that Botman wasn't in there. But again, we don't really know who's going to drop out there when Botman does come in. It could be Burn, could be Schär. We just have to wait and see. But good start to the season for Fabian Schär. And again, he's a player, if he stays in the team, if he starts the first 3, 4, 5 games, he's a player we could look to on the first wildcard as well. So that's the defenders: Chilwell, Cucurella, Zinchenko, Saliba, Perisic, Trippier, Castagna, and Fabian Schär. On to the midfielders now. At Tottenham, Heung-min Son, for obvious reasons. Cracking player, amazing season last season. Not a huge return in game week 1, but I'm sure he'll be in our teams at some point this season. Kulusevski was probably the standout performer for me watching the highlights on Match Today. He was unbelievable against Southampton. Could have had even more points, so it could be another big season for Kulusevski. His first full season at Tottenham. Yes, he's got a price rise from last season, but I think we need to ignore that. This guy is a special talent, and if he continues in the same vein that he did in game week 1, he's going to be starting most weeks. I've seen a few people asking, is Richarlison a threat to Kulusevski? I don't see it whatsoever, because Kulusevski's just too good. If you are Antonio Conte, Kulusevski's in your starting 11 every single week. So Kulusevski, 8 million. He's got Chelsea next, not ideal. There's a question about him later as well, so I'll come back to him. But I wish I went from him in game week 1, because I love the guy. I do love Mason Mount as well, so there's a bit of hindsight in there. But again, fixture against Southampton was what I was eyeing up, so slight regret there. And I'm sure he'll be in my team before too long. Moving on to Chelsea, Raheem Sterling. I've got Mason Mount. Again, question marks over, do we keep him now? Do we sell him? I'll cover that in the questions. I've added Sterling to the watch list. Decent debut in the Premier League for Chelsea for Sterling. He is expensive, but I do think he will score plenty of goals this season, so going to keep an eye on that as well. Jared Bowen added, now that he's got the Manchester City fixture out of the way. There's a decent run of fixtures for the Hammers now. Saka also added, so I've got Martinelli and I've got Jesus. I said I wasn't overly keen on the Arsenal attack and triple up in game week 1. The closer I got to the deadline, I was more open to it. I was half considering going with Saka over Mason Mount. I think I am more open to the idea now, having watched a very impressive Arsenal performance in game week 1. So I don't mind it. Martinelli, Jesus and Saka, I think that's absolutely fine. But there is value in that defence as well. So Saka is back in my thoughts. Luis Diaz, it was between him and Robertson for me. Obviously not a huge amount of difference in points in game week 1. But Diaz certainly passed the eye test, hit the woodwork, had a goal ruled out for offside. Really good performance, and I think he's going to get plenty of FPL points as well. So again, that's something I'll revisit on the wildcard most likely. Do I keep Robertson or do I switch to Luis Diaz? But there's a certain Darwin Núñez who's in the conversation now as well. Phil Foden also added with a view to the Bournemouth fixture in game week 2. Those of us who have Mason Mount, only played 64 minutes, plays Tottenham next. Do we jump off and do we jump to another 8 million midfielder? And if we do, Phil Foden is an option. Played on the right for Manchester City, which is good news for us fantasy managers, because now we know he can play on the right, he can play on the left. He could even play a false 9 from time to time if Haaland does get a rest in certain games. So Foden does look probably the most attractive of the Man City midfielders. The cheap ones, I should say. De Bruyne is obviously the most attractive. De Bruyne is not on my watch list because I've got Haaland, I've got Salah, and I won't be looking to switch either of those two anytime soon. Few more midfielders, quite a lot of midfielders on the watch list here actually. Trossard, one of the best players on the pitch against Manchester United. Marcus Rashford, he was in and out of my game week 1 drafts. In the end, he dropped out of it. I think I've seen enough from him in game week 1 to still be in my thoughts. He's still very cheap. I think he had 3 shots in the box, so It wasn't a fantastic performance from any Manchester United player, but Rashford it was okay. I think the main thing is he played 90 minutes, which is a good sign. So not ready to go completely off him just yet. Eriksen did catch the eye more so. We know how good Christian Eriksen is in terms of chance creation. We know he can get goals as well. So I think it's a pretty close shootout between Rashford and Eriksen in the Manchester United midfield for the same price. And if I was forced to buy one of them for Game Week 2, I'd probably lean towards Eriksen now. You've got those set pieces as well. He was commanding corners, took a few of the indirect free kicks as well. So more avenues to points with Eriksen as opposed to Rashford. Some cheaper midfielders here as well. These are very much guys, just going to keep an eye on them. They had decent performances in Game Week 1. Rodrigo and Aronson at Leeds. Aronson in particular, pretty exciting prospect for FPL. Hwang at Wolves. He's a midfielder in FPL, playing as a striker while Jimenez is out. Neto in a lot of Game Week 1 teams, still in my thoughts as well. He's on the watch list alongside Podence. Podence was the goal scorer. So I've got Hwang, Neto and Podence from Wolves. Now I'm not in a huge rush to get any of them. These are more of a monitor and wait and see because Wolves do have good fixtures. And finally, 4.5 million from Brentford. Da Silva scored a great goal. So I think Pereira is the best 4.5 midfielder, but Da Silva is certainly one to keep an eye on as well this season. Completing the watch list are 6 strikers. Harry Kane, quiet Game Week 1, but we know what Harry Kane can do. Like I said, I'm pretty happy with Haaland now, probably for the long term. So Kane is probably going to have to, probably won't be in my team for quite a while. Again, just reassess things when the first wildcard is, whenever I decide to play it. Darwin Núñez, very impressive performance from the bench. Klopp, one of the reasons why a lot of people didn't go for him in their Game Week 1 squad, because it was pretty clear he wasn't going to start because Klopp kept saying he's had such a good impact. He used the word impact so many times, and he certainly had a big impact in Game Week 1, like he did in the Community Shield as well. So at 9 million, certainly in the conversation, because to me, he looks the real deal. I've not really seen him play before he joined the Premier League. This guy, I think, will very quickly become one of the first names in Klopp's team sheets because he looks that good. Obviously, small sample size, but first 2 performances have been really, really impressive. Couple of cheaper strikers. Patrick Bamford, impressive in Game Week 1. Good to see him back. Callum Wilson, great goal. Lovely little flick over the goalkeeper. Ivan Toney got himself on the score sheet and he's got an easy fixture against Manchester United next. And finally, the main man, Mitrovic. What a performance that was against Liverpool. Love the guy. 43 goals last season. He is going to score plenty of goals this year. He will be good value in FPL. He's already proven that he's going to be good value in FPL. Yes, it's one game week, but I like Marco Silva's comments as well after the game. We basically said, if you create the chances for this guy, he will score the goals. Everything is tailored in that Fulham team to get those balls landing on Mitrovic's head. And when they land on his head, more often than not, they go into the back of the net. So Mitrovic will definitely be in my team in the near future. Just a quick run through of those midfielders and forwards again. Son, Kulusevski, Sterling, Bowen, Saka, Diaz, Foden, Trossard, Rashford, Eriksen, Rodrigo, Aronson, Hwang, Neto, Podence and Da Silva. And in the forwards, Kane, Darwin, Bamford, Wilson, Toney and Mitrovic. Questions from Twitter now. Thanks as always to everyone who sent them in. You can do so each week at FPL General. I put out a post each week and you just reply with your question under that one. Usually send that out on a Sunday because I'm recording these now on Sunday evenings for a Monday release. First one is from Sertalp. Sertalp, before I answer his question, I should say Sertalp has an excellent podcast himself in Bass. It's called FPL Optimized. Go and check that one out when you get a chance. Sertalp asks, I would love to hear what you think about the Kane to Haaland transfer. Sertalp says he doesn't think it's worth spending a free transfer for, but would be happy to hear the pros and cons of a move of this nature, and in brackets, spending a free transfer for short-term better fixture versus sticking to the plan. So Sertalp, it sounds like, got Kane Game Week 1 and wasn't really planning to do Kane to Haaland Game Week 2 because, in his view, Kane has good fixtures after Game Week 2. So it was a get Kane, stick with him and stick to the plan. Now, my experience here is even if you didn't have a plan to get Haaland, I don't think any plan is ever set in stone and you've got to be flexible. So I honestly think now it's just an easy move because of what Haaland did in Game Week 1 and because of the fixture in Game Week 2 and just simply how highly captained he's going to be against Bournemouth. If you've already been stung by him in Game Week 1 and then he plays Bournemouth next and you don't have him again and he's going to be heavily captained, in a way you kind of just got to protect yourself. So I would be making the switch. And I think a lot of people probably already had it pre-planned anyway. But even if I didn't and I was planning to keep Kane, I think it's just because it's Haaland. I think you've got to make an exception for this guy because he is unbelievable. We've seen it all for ourselves, maybe for the first time in Game Week 1 if you hadn't seen him play for Dortmund and stuff before or hadn't seen the Champions League. And if you've got Kevin De Bruyne behind him, playing those balls in, he's a better player than Kane. He's playing in a better team than Kane and he's got better providers than Kane does as well. So all signs to me point to Haaland, and I think it's an easy transfer. This podcast will go out on Monday. I'm seeing a lot of people on Sunday making the transfer straight away because Haaland might rise in price overnight, and I think it's absolutely fine. I don't usually make early transfers, but sometimes you've got to. If you've got 0.0 in the bank, I would sell Kane for Haaland and just be done with it, and you'll sleep better. So I know it's hard. You've got to weigh up how much did you believe in your plan beforehand, and do you think it's justified to change the plan? But just breaking it down simply, if I had Kane now and he has Chelsea next, and I didn't have Haaland and he has Bournemouth next, I would just make the move. Question from Reese Griffiths: should we captain anyone but Haaland for the rest of the season? So obviously a lot of these questions came in right after the Manchester City game, so a lot of high emotion involved in these questions. So good performance Game Week 1 from Haaland. Looking at Manchester City's fixtures for the next 5, they've got Bournemouth, Newcastle, Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa. Absolutely nothing to be scared of there for Pep Guardiola and his team. So before the season started, a lot of people were talking about just captaining Salah every week and how quickly things change. Now we have people asking, should we just auto-captain Haaland every week? I think we probably can for the next week or two. But I think we've got to remember Champions League is going to kick in. I think it might be after Game Week 4. And that's where things are going to get a little bit scarier for Haaland owners because Pep will rotate and there will be slightly more question marks over his game time. We've seen it, he came off early today, albeit only about 10 minutes early. But maybe that is a sign of things to come. There has been comments, I think, from Haaland saying, choosing Man City because one of the reasons was they're going to, they've promised to look after him. If he does need rest or he needs, a little bit of less game time, he'll get it there, whereas he might not have got it elsewhere. So for now, yes, you can auto-captain Haaland because he's got Bournemouth next. I think Salah has Manchester United Game Week 3, which, is a pretty good fixture itself, but then Man City have Crystal Palace. So if Haaland does well against Bournemouth, everyone's going to be on him again against Crystal Palace. So yeah, I think you can auto-captain him until Champions League kicks in at least. Question from Moss Rullen: no Haaland and no Salah in my team. Am I an idiot or do I stick with my plan and go without? Moss has Kevin De Bruyne and Harry Kane. So this is FPL in a nutshell. Moss went for De Bruyne and Kane Game Week 1, 2 very good picks with pretty good fixtures. And then Haaland and Salah, obviously the more highly owned players do the business, and it feels like a huge kick in the teeth right at the start of the season. But you don't panic. It's Game Week 1. It's much better for this to happen in Game Week 1 than it is for it to happen to you in Game Week 37. You've got the whole season to claw back whatever you lost. And it's Game Week 1, you haven't lost a massive amount of ground. So what you need to do there, if you don't have Haaland and you don't have Salah, in that case, again, I'd probably be looking at getting one of them in this week. So you've got to decide, do you go KDB to Salah, which is always tricky if you don't have cash in the bank? You probably just make the easy move of Kane to Haaland. That's what I'd be doing there. KDB himself is a really good option against Bournemouth, and then you probably just figure out a way to get Haaland in the near future after that. But again, I think the main thing, it happens every season. After Game Week 1, people start to panic. People think they've made terrible decisions. You didn't make terrible decisions. Picking Kevin De Bruyne and Harry Kane in Game Week 1 wasn't a terrible decision. They're perfectly viable picks who, on another day, both of them do really well, and Haaland and Salah have quiet game weeks. So don't focus on the outcome too much. Focus on your decision-making process, and it was sound, so don't beat yourself up. That's just FPL, and that just happens over the course of the season. So don't overreact is the main advice there. FPL Sponge says, after only one game week, is patience the key and saving your free transfer to use it with more information and more options without a hit next week? Yeah, so good question. Again, it comes down to obviously specific teams here. If you are without a certain player that you think is really important, you probably don't save a transfer this week. You probably go and get that transfer done, whoever that is. And that doesn't necessarily have to be Haaland. You might think Mitrovic is a must-have for this game week. You don't need to necessarily save a transfer. So in previous seasons, I would have always said to myself, bank a transfer as often as possible. But when I was reading Sponge's question here, one of my notes I put down beside it was, do we need to be patient for wildcarding soon? So I think a lot of people will wildcard early, between game week 3 and game week 8, sometime during that period. So do we need to save a transfer as often as possible this season as we would have previously for patient managers like myself? Probably not. And that's playing into my thinking with Mason Mount. Already, I'm kind of frustrated with Mason Mount. If this was last season, I would have just banked my transfer and played Mount against Tottenham. But my early thoughts here are, I've got no other issues. I'm probably going to wildcard in the near future. Why not get rid of Mount, who's got a difficult fixture, and get someone in who's got a better fixture, who had a better game week 1. So I don't think you necessarily need to be patient. If your team is in really good shape and you don't think you really have any weak links in your squad, 2 free transfers in game week 3 with another week of information, of course, is always good. But yeah, I would say don't be too passive either this season. If there's a player you want and you've got a free transfer, especially in these first 2 or 3 game weeks, you probably just go out and get that player. Question from Eric O'Connor. Does the prospect of Zinchenko moving into midfield damage or help his FPL points potential, or is he better off playing at left back? So Zinchenko played left back on Friday night, but he didn't really. I mean, he spent most of his time playing almost as a central midfielder, like he's done many times playing left back for Manchester City. They've got a lot of possession. He moves into midfield and he gets forward. He creates chances and he has a couple of pops at goal as well. So I don't think it matters too much. I think when Zinchenko plays left back, he's going to end up in midfield a lot anyway. So he's basically going to play quite a similar position in most matches, whether on the team sheet beforehand you think he's a left back or a DM. So I think he could be a very, very good FPL prospect. Watching the Arsenal game on Friday, I know it was only one game, but Saliba was in there and Zinchenko was in there, and it just looked really good. So Tierney might have to be pretty patient to get himself back in there. If Zinchenko just plays well every week, he's going to stay in the team. So Tierney might not get back in too quickly. So yeah, Zinchenko I think is a really good FPL option. Question from Tropical FPL. I think this is going to be a question every single week. Which 8 million midfielder is most likely to score big this game week? So what I've done here, I've listed them all and their fixtures. So I've kind of rated them based on fixture really. So the City guys have the best fixture against Bournemouth, so Foden or Mahrez. Question is, do they play? I think given Mahrez didn't play game week 1, and Foden played on the right, Foden's more versatile. I would go Foden if you're taking a gamble on an 8 million City midfielder this week, and that does tempt me from Mason Mount. Luis Diaz plays Crystal Palace. That's really good as well. If you don't already have 3 Liverpool players, I probably would just get Luis Diaz over a Man City midfielder. Saka plays Leicester. That's a pretty decent fixture as well. Kulusevski's got a difficult one against Chelsea, but then he was the best performer in game week 1, so I'd happily play him in that one. Maddison plays Arsenal and Mount plays Tottenham. So I'd probably have Diaz top, then the City guys if you're up for a gamble, then Saka, then Kulu, and then Maddison and Mount towards the bottom because they've got the more tricky fixture. So already I don't like that I'm rating my 8 million midfielder at the bottom of those 7 players. Question from Bernardo. Is it worth transferring out Kulusevski for Foden? Bernardo says he's tempted by the Bournemouth fixture, but Kulusevski seems to be in good form and has good fixtures in 3 of the next 4. So in this scenario, one of my thoughts was when Kulusevski was in my game week 1 draft, I said to myself, he's great for game week 1, and then I'll lose him for a Man City midfielder game week 2. But if I was in that scenario now, I would just keep him because he was too good. Even though it's Chelsea next, the fixtures are good afterwards, and he could even get something against Chelsea. So Kulusevski's performance in game week 1 would have changed my thoughts on that, booking in a transfer for a Man City midfielder. Buying a Man City midfielder is a lottery. You could sell Kulusevski and your Man City midfielders on the bench. So why not just keep the guy who you know is going to play against Chelsea? Kulu was that good. He could be a season keeper on that first performance. So give him another week and then reassess things. Question from Alan Caw. Is it time to sell Bailey and Neto? No, both players have good fixtures. You didn't buy them for one game week. Give them another one at least and then come back to it in game week 3. I think Bailey's got Everton this week. Can't remember who Wolves have, but I know it's a pretty decent fixture as well. So yeah, don't give up on those two guys after one game week. Turtle FPL asks, is Darwin the best third Liverpool asset, or is it still a wait and see? I don't think we can say just yet he is the best third Liverpool asset, but he could even become the second best FPL asset at Liverpool if he plays like he did in the Community Shield and in game week 1. He could, surpass Trent as the second best Liverpool asset. So I still think for me, Salah and Trent are right up there. And then it's a shootout between Robertson, Diaz, and Darwin is certainly right up there with those three now. So again, just not enough information yet. So for me, Darwin is a wait and see. It's quite hard to get to him because you're not going to sell Haaland. If you don't have Haaland, you're going to get him. I don't think you sell Jesus yet. So yeah, just give it another week and then maybe look to Darwin in game week 3. That might be something to bank a transfer for. If you can bank a transfer this week, then maybe you can. It's much easier to get Darwin in with 2 free transfers in game week 3. So yeah, still a wait and see for me, but that could change very quickly. Question from FPL Marshall. After game week 1, would you keep Manchester United assets or start moving them on, Rashford in particular? So it's Brentford away next for Manchester United. I would give them another week. I would rather bank a transfer than sell someone like Rashford. Like I said, 90 minutes, couple of shots in the box. Give them the Brentford game and then reassess it and give yourself 2 free transfers instead. Question from Eriker. Perisic, keep or sell? If you went for Perisic in game week 1, I think you've made your bed now. You stay in your bed and you keep him. You hope he starts against Chelsea. If he doesn't, it's Wolves and Nottingham Forest after that, and surely he'll get the starts there. So if you've got him game week 1, stick with it. Again, I would rather bank a transfer than sell Perisic this week. Game week 2 captaincy now. I think it is a straight shootout between 2 players. Haaland has Bournemouth at home. Mohamed Salah has Crystal Palace at home. So Salah did the business game week 1. You could just leave it on him for a pretty good fixture against Crystal Palace game week 2. But I just think Bournemouth is a better fixture, newly promoted team. So yeah, for me, it's going to be Captain Haaland against Bournemouth. If you've got Kevin De Bruyne and you don't have Haaland, I think Kevin De Bruyne is a great captain for that fixture as well. So I think they're probably the 3 standout captaincy candidates for game week 2. So far, game week 1, game week 2, the captaincy's been pretty straightforward. Not too many candidates. And it could continue like that. If Salah and Haaland continue to bang, it's going to be captain one or the other most game weeks this season. Chelsea play Tottenham this week. So that is going to put people off the Son and Kane captaincies. In terms of potential transfers, so I always ask myself, first of all, can I bank a transfer? I think I definitely can this week, but it's whether I want to play Mason Mount against Tottenham after 64 minutes last week, or do I take a gamble? Do I get a Phil Foden, which does excite me? I would like to have triple city for the Bournemouth game. I've got Cancelo already as well. The other options, do I go to Kulusevski, who I very nearly went for in game week 1? I don't think I'll do that because it's Chelsea. Saka is another option. So at the moment, I'm probably leaning towards taking a gamble on a Manchester City midfielder for the Bournemouth game. And at the moment, it's Foden. So I'll give that a bit more thought over the week. I'll give Mahrez some thought. Grealish has to come in under consideration there as well. Maybe if I want to save 1 million. But yeah, Foden seems the safest Manchester City, if there's such a thing as a safe Manchester City midfielder. So Mount to Foden is on my mind. Could end up banking. So yeah, I mean, it's Sunday night, so there's a lot to digest before I come to a decision. Other players on my mind, I would love to get Mitrovic straight in, but I'm not going to sell Jesus, so that is out of the question. Bailey, blank in game week 1, but he's got Everton next, so happy to keep him as well. So to me, it feels like Mason Mount out, or else banking the transfer. So hopefully nothing else crops up between now and the deadline. Best of luck for Game Week 2, folks. I'll be back next Monday and every Monday next week to preview Game Week 3. Hit subscribe so you don't miss it. If you'd like to hear more from me in the meantime, visit patreon.com/FPL General, where you'll get an eye test podcast for every game I watch, a Thursday night live stream, and a team reveal before each deadline. Wishing you all green arrows.
The Athletic.